So how in the world do you come up with ideas for your cruising lifestyle? Sometimes we do ours when we're on a road trip. Hi, I'm Nika Waters and welcome to the Boat Galley podcast. Today I'm sharing some of our recent road trip conversations that absolutely will impact our cruising plans. Today's episode of the Boat Galley podcast is sponsored by Infinity, the most trusted name in woven vinyl flooring in the marine industry. Since 2008, Infinity has offered boat owners premier flooring options proven to withstand even the most demanding environments. Each of their products is equipped with UV-stable, fade resistance, and antimicrobial technology, giving them both durability and style that can't be matched. Thinking about kicking carpet to the curb? Make the switch to Infinity and see the difference true luxury makes. Visit InfinityLWV.com and use the coupon code GALLEY for 10% off any area rug. Limit 1 per customer. Those of you who have been listening to the Boat Galley podcast for a while might know that my husband Jeremy and I are in the process of fixing up a house in Vermont that's actually part of our process to get ready to go cruising on our sailboat, Calypso. That's a 28-foot Bristol Channel cutter that we've owned since 1992, and we're just about to launch both our kids off to college, and we're planning the next phase of our life. We're currently spending an awful lot of time on the road between our house in Charlottesville, Virginia, and the one in Vermont that we're working on. It's almost 1,600 miles round trip, and we have done this trip almost every month since April. We set ourselves up, we take food with us in the car, have our podcasts and books on tape that we're listening to, but we also spend an awful lot of time talking. We spend time deciding what we're going to do, and we get ideas every time we open our eyes and look out the window. So what kinds of things do we talk about when we're on the road? Well, maybe you'd like to hear. So in April, we went up for the day. Actually, I went up with my parents for the day, saw all kinds of snow, ice still on the lake. The whole time we were going up there, we weren't talking about cruising plans, but we were talking about everything else under the sun. Talking about the house, family, upcoming graduations, which gas stations have better junk food, better coffee, how overrated my dad thinks our favorite ice cream spot is, how come they didn't buy a house a little bit further south of the lake house instead of the one in far southern Vermont. In May, when Jeremy and I drove up for Memorial Day weekend, yes, we actually drove up just for the weekend. We needed to take advantage of kind of dump days where you could get rid of some bulky things. And we decided we were going to bring our garage refrigerator up to the house up at the lake. Along the way, we talked about the kids. We talked about Vermont beer. We talked about Virginia beer. We talked about how much beer we might need to take with us when we go cruising, how good homemade bread is. And we also talked about house projects because we were starting to think mostly house instead of boat. In June, we had the most amazing trip going up there. We stacked the trailer with garage shelving, 2 kayaks, a windsurfer. Inside of the van, we put tools and clothes, food, a carpet pad. I think that was actually the time that we stuck the dinghy inside the van and also a dresser. We had a few containers filled with odds and ends, some more tools. We also had kayak paddles and life jackets. It's really interesting when we're packing the car to drive from Virginia to Vermont and realizing that there's some things that we want to keep that are part of our life, that are part of our life as boaters, that we're not necessarily going to take on the boat when we go, but it's really nice to have a home for them now. That trip in June, we did in one long day. We left at 4 a.m, pulled in a little bit before 6. One of the things that we noticed as we were driving was, well, we knew this anyway, but every time we drive, we go alongside the Hudson River up near Albany. And you can see at least one lock on that river from I-87. And I talked about how much fun I thought it might be to take the boat up the Hudson. And Jeremy, who flips things around like nobody that I know, said, well, why don't we go down the Hudson? The joys of Google on a phone, sending us to the maps, tracing the coast of Nova Scotia. We found that there are a couple of islands off the coast of Newfoundland that are French protectorates called Saint-Pierre and Miquelon. And then we started to think about, the St. Lawrence Seaway. And how do we do that? If we don't want to do the Hudson twice, up and down or down and up, depending on where we start, we're going to have to do the St. Lawrence Seaway. That sent us to learning about how that river, which looks like, for some bizarre reason, I feel like it should flow from east to west. It doesn't. It flows from west to east, going north along the coast of New Brunswick to the Gaspé Peninsula. We talked about, do we cruise Lake Champlain? When do the locks open for traffic after the winter? Does it freeze all the way? I think it probably does. We started to realize that if we decided to do this in one season, we were going to miss so much. We don't love the cold, so we're not going to stay up there for the winter time. But what happens if we did? What if we decided we were going to do that trip, taking our time and enjoying ourselves? What do we do? What do we do for a warm place to live? This is all in the car. Remember, this is all a road trip conversation. We talk about couch surfing. We talked about some things like a couple of friends of ours have done, trying for jobs in national parks somewhere warm. I think that you can volunteer and they might give you housing in response to or in exchange for your work at the park. That sounded pretty good. And then as we were looking out the window, kind of taking a pause between our animated discussion, this pair of white Ford Transit vans passed us. There was a 1-1 and a 1-2 were painted on the back windows. And later on, we saw 14 and 14 and 2. It was like it was a caravan of vans. And Jeremy looked and he said, we could get a van like that one. We could turn it into someplace to live. He was so excited about this whole thing. And I turned around and looked at our stuffed to the gills minivan that we keep telling people how much we love. We realized, we've paid for this van. We love this van. It works. It gets great gas mileage. And then the conversation was, well, does anybody do a van conversion in a Sienna? It's amazing how a road trip conversation turns into things like cruising plans and cruising routes. It's house projects. It's how we're going to stuff things into the garage. And now, apparently, we're talking about trying to figure out how to do a van conversion on our Sienna minivan. I will say that our life, cruisers, about to be cruisers, our life is never boring. Thanks for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. We love sharing tidbits and advice, bits and pieces about getting ready to go cruising, because it all is actually about getting ready to go cruising. How do you think of plans and ideas for yourself? And are you quick to jump on any ideas that come your way? Can't wait to share an Anchorage with you sometime soon. Bye for now.